What's up, everybody? Welcome to Let's Talk Markets with Dave Lauer. I am your co-host, Pink, and this week we have a special guest with us, Byron, also known as B, putting the B in Be Your Own Bank in the Loopring community, and he runs the public-facing side of Loopring. So welcome, Byron.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah,
thanks for joining us.
Definitely. This is I have to say, I saw you on Super Stonk way back in the day. You did an AMA, and so definitely always been interested in what Loopring is doing, what you guys are trying to achieve. So I want to commend you on everything that you've done in the last few years that I've been an investor and just a watcher. So
awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah. There's so many amazing people in the community. There's so much overlap between the Loopring community and the GME community. So yeah, just super pumped to be here and talk about whatever we're going to talk about.
So how much snow do you guys have? That's my question to you, because we don't have any on the ground. We've had a few snows so far, just to give everyone a little context. But apparently there's a storm coming.
I've got no snow here, which is great. I'm in the southern hemisphere, so we're upside down. We're just entering summer right now. So,
nice.
But I was born and raised in Canada, Dave. So
I could hear it. You said a boat. I could hear it right off the bat.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Canada, so yeah, you can definitely tell by the accent. But yeah, I don't miss snow at all.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Argentina right now. I've been all around the globe. I left Canada many years ago. I spent some time in Europe. I spent some time in hopping around the Caribbean. And then I kind of settled in Dubai for a long time. But now I'm down in South America.
That all sounds awful.
Here. Yeah. Yeah. I think I finally found a home. Let's see.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I've always wanted to ski in South America. That's sort of on my bucket list.
Chile, beautiful places down here. Yeah.
And ski in the summer. How cool is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a crazy world and upside down here.
Yeah. You get dizzy? I guess you're
it's a little hard on the head,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. You adjust to it over time.
The only thing I know is from The Simpsons, where the Coriolis effect means that the toilet water goes the wrong direction, right?
Yes.
Anyone seen that Simpsons episode? Right.
I should go check out next time I flush, I guess.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. I think this is really cool. I've learned a lot about Loopring recently. I guess I'm late to the game. Everyone was sort of yelling at me at various points in the past couple of years of getting on the Loopring train. And so, I will admit I'm a little late to it, but I'm really interested in what I've learned. And so I'm excited to talk to you about it. I've had some experiences in crypto personally, from being pretty early on the Bitcoin train and as a trader, having what was both my best and worst trade of my life, both being Bitcoin.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. It's made a lot of money and yet didn't make way more money. And that was my fault for not being a true believer and being a trader. And I'm reformed since then. And then we have lost Pink. I'm going to apologize to everyone. We'll see if we can reconnect her. But in the meantime, then I started learning more about DeFi and decentralized approaches to finance. And at one point actually was really into 0x. And then having learned more about Loopring, I see a lot of similarities between Loopring and 0x. And so I guess just to start, at a high level, why don't you just take us through, before we get into that, what is Loopring? How does it fit into the crypto ecosystem, and what sets it apart from other, let's say, layer 1 and other layer 2 protocols?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned 0x. I guess I see where you're coming from with that similarity. Loopring and 0x actually both started out as just centralized exchange protocols.
Right.
Back in 2018, we launched as just a decentralized exchange protocol, and basically we built the first ever ZK rollup, which is a zero knowledge rollup, first layer 2 on top of Ethereum. So we're real innovators in that category. And we did it to scale our own products. It wasn't to like, this is a big thing that differentiates Loopring from a lot of other projects and infrastructure layers that are building on top of Ethereum. Is like, we are like, first and foremost, we're a user-facing like product and infrastructure company. Like we build user-facing products. We want to onboard 1 billion users to this new crypto economy. And we use the infrastructure that we build to help scale our products. Basically, the long-term goal, like I said, is to basically help everyone around the world become their own bank and come into this new crypto ecosystem. If we're successful one day, we'll be like a super app ecosystem where like you never really need to leave the Loopring ecosystem. Everything you need, from paying your bills to spending to trading to swapping to investing, earning, everything is all in one place. That's our end goal. So yeah.
Okay, so I really want to get deep into the be your own bank, but before we do, I think zero knowledge is really interesting, and I think a lot of people probably don't know what that means. So can you explain it for people who don't have maybe as technical of background as you do?
So like zero knowledge proof is ZKPs is a term that you'll hear flying around. Basically, it's a way to prove different things on the blockchain in ways that doesn't expose all the information. So like, if I want to prove that something is true, I don't need to show whoever wants the proof the information, the data that I'm collecting to collect that proof. You just know through cryptography that what I'm saying is correct, and if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about zero knowledge proofs, I usually associate that with privacy coins like Monero and Zcash. But I think here it's a slightly different use case for it, in that I mean, maybe this, I don't know if this information is data, but I think it has to do with pooling transactions, but maintaining privacy in pooled transactions. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So like, we're proving that like Alice or Bob or whoever owns this amount of tokens on layer 2, they own that amount of tokens, and we post that to Ethereum layer 1, and Ethereum layer 1 accepts that as the reality because they know that we're using these ZK proofs, and so they can accept it as the truth fact. It's been verified, even though they don't have all the information from that actual layer 2, if that makes sense.
And so does that information sort of stay shielded and private no matter what, or is it just to the layer 1 that it's shielded, but on layer 2 anyone can see it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So most of that data, like everything that's posted on chain, is public and verifiable. So like we expose like a layer 2 block explorer where you can see all the transactions. But basically, like the Ethereum layer 1, it would be much too slow to for the Ethereum layer 1 to grab all those transactions and do all the calculations and prove everything, like who owns what itself. So we do that all together, put it into a block and submit it to Ethereum, and they just accept it as fact because we use a ZK proof to prove it. Yeah.
Okay, so one of my other questions was really about sort of like time to finality and throughput. And so what are those kind of stats for Loopring, and how do you achieve them?
Yeah, like right now we're like our throughput is, I think, at max around like 4,000 transactions per second. Like right now we haven't needed that. Like for example, like the highest transactions per second that's ever been needed on Ethereum has been like 22 or something like that transactions per second. Like once we reach enough scale, like I think a better example here is like Visa, MasterCard. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like they at their highest scale, like doing global transactions, are around like 10 or 20,000 transactions per second, and that's like most of the transactions going through the world. So I think like in a few years, like with the advance of like layer 3 technology and different advancements that we're making now with better like ZK AVMs, and then we can kind of live on top of ZK AVMs, I think we can easily reach that scale. I think we'll be able to reach much more than like the Visa MasterCard limit.
Yeah, it's funny for me because coming from high frequency trading, I was building systems that were handling like millions of events per second and like hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, and I never realized like the payments infrastructure doesn't even get close to anything like that, but it has a whole different set of requirements, right?
Yeah,
In terms of preventing double spending and all of that.
exactly. There's trade-offs, and that's basically exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Is like one day we want to rebuild the entire like TradFi financial system, but on crypto rails. We're not there yet because we don't have that kind of scale, like 100,000 transactions per second, at least not in a decentralized way. But yeah, that's what we want to accomplish. We want to have a much more free and fair system for all, like in this decentralized world. But it needs to be at least as fast and as user friendly as the traditional finance world.
Yeah, you know, this is an area that I find particularly intriguing. So I really want to hear your vision of, you know, you like to say, be your own bank, and I see a lot of people on social media who have a lot of disdain for the traditional finance system, you know, the traditional world of finance, and you know, I certainly I don't blame them for it, and I probably hold a similar level of disdain, but many of them want to blow it all up, and they say, you know, we need to sweep it out, and we need a complete overhaul, and usually they're thinking of some type of decentralized blockchain-based replacement, and it's not that I disagree with that sentiment, but I struggle to see the path to it, right? Because I think a lot of their sentiment is wipe it out, a la you know, like Fight Club kind of thing, just literally blow up all the databases, fine. But you know, I think a lot of people get hurt in a scenario like that. You know, I think that creates sort of mass poverty, and it's a terrible way to transition. So I'm curious, like, what way is there to make, you know, what is your vision for it, and what way is there to make like a reasonable and sort of sustainable transition to a global system like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on that path right
right?
now. Yeah, simple. I got all the solutions now. Like again, I'm not a fortune teller or anything like that. I can't see the future, but to me, I think we have a very clear path ahead, at least from my perspective, and we're kind of on that path right now, where like we've seen like failures with like FTX and a lot of different centralization failures like that. Like I just think it's inevitable that we end up on a more decentralized rails, and where people like can't get hurt in mass through like centralized scams or just the like, human error that comes with centralization problems. But anyways, like I think the transition that we can take is using stable coins that are pegged to fiat currencies. I think that's the first step. Like I said, like blockchains aren't really at the scale, at least decentralized open blockchains like Ethereum aren't really at the scale that we need right now. We're getting closer each day. But for now, we can start with like simple use cases like DeFi, like investing, earning, things like that. We can do that in a pretty scalable way and start to onboard the masses in that way. And we can use stable coins that are pegged to fiat currencies and use those on these new crypto rails. And eventually, I think when the fiat system eventually collapses, which I believe it very well could one day, most governments and they seem to be on the similar path of inflation and maybe even hyperinflation. I mean, I see the end result of it here in Argentina, where there's just horrible hyperinflation.
Yeah.
It's so like, I mean, to fight the beast, you got to get into the belly of the beast.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. You're right in it. I mean, you know, I don't know if people are, you know, familiar historically with sort of Argentina's currency crises and stuff, but man, that's right in the middle of it, and definitely like a poster child for, you know, or a precautionary tale and poster child for what can happen when, you know, government mismanages currency and fiscal policy.
Exactly. There's so many people hurt. There's so much poverty. There's so much just unfairness, and it all just comes from this like horrible failures of centralization. But that, anyways, I'm happy to go further into that.
Yeah.
But like back to
now we're off on a tangent.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think the transition starts with these stable coins that are on crypto rails. And then eventually, I think governments are going to try to come out with these CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies. And then we're going to be at this crossroads where we can choose path A, go down the CBDC route, where the governments can take complete control over your lives and your finances, or we go down this other path where we use stable coins and we build an economy around stable coins and at least that gives people a quick exit. So if currencies start to fail, if the US dollar stablecoin all of a sudden starts to hyperinflate one day, I hope not, but at least if it does happen, I hope it happens slow and people can transition into like Bitcoin or Ethereum or something that's bigger and more stable. And then eventually, I think whole economies can be built around these crypto coins. So yeah, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm curious. Like CBDCs are something I've been thinking about, and even with we the investors were considering the response to like a proposal from the CFPB about openness and like mandating openness in the financial system and ownership of data. And one of the angles we're thinking about taking is saying, well, if a CBDC is probably inevitable, so why don't we try to put some guardrails around that to ensure privacy for people? Do you think that's a reasonable approach, or is a CBDC sort of destined to be a problem, regardless, especially as governments get into trouble and there's no sort of, I don't know, do you think there's a good way for governments to implement a CBDC, or is it just not possible?
In my opinion, it can be okay if they at least connect these CBDCs to public blockchains and give people like a quick and seamless exit if they want to exit. Like if you try,
but does the government want to do that?
Exactly. So, like in my opinion, CBDCs are doomed to fail. I hope they implement them in a proper way where they're at least connected or on top of Ethereum blockchain or connected to a public and open blockchains that people have this exit. Because for me, governments can't do anything like efficiently. So I can't imagine that they implement something like this in a great way. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, and just to clarify, CBDC is central bank digital currency. So that would be like essentially a stable coin, but issued by the central bank, kind of an electronic form of, in the US, the dollar, and one which has some properties, I think, of blockchain tech, but as we're sort of discussing, can kind of either be privately held and controlled by the central bank, or, as you're proposing, sort of overlaid on a public blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Yeah, for me, that would be the best way for a government to do that. Like if they still want to at least have control over their currency and like not lose complete control, like I'm sure that they don't want to, then yeah, I think CBDCs on top of a public open blockchain would be a good way to do that. Like get rid of your competitors like USDC, USDT. Like the government doesn't want people using those, so issue your own on top of Ethereum blockchain. Let people use that. Keep your dollar dominancy if you want.
So let's go back to be your own bank, and then let's take that with sort of how you introduced Loopring, which I don't remember the exact wording you said, but you talked about the UI, focusing on the UI and the user interface to crypto, and to me, I haven't heard you say that before, and that just set off like the light bulbs, because I think one of the biggest problems to this idea that the future is a decentralized world is not necessarily like this a technology issue. It's actually a user interface issue, right? And it's both the usability and simplicity of interacting with these systems and the dangers of holding your own keys, and exactly. Right? Like the fact how much Bitcoin, 20% of Bitcoin is gone because people hold their own keys, and I hold my own keys, but like people have real problems with this, even experts.
Yeah. I don't think that the average person wants to control their own destiny that much. It would be super scary. It is super scary to like one day if we have all of our assets on a blockchain and you have the deed to your house, you have like everything that's on chain, and
you get social engineered out of that. Like,
yeah,
terrible.
Exactly. You're securing all that with a seed phrase written on a piece of paper. Never going to happen. So this is why we're building what we're building. Like we also built one of the first ever smartphones, which is like a smart contract wallet on Ethereum, and arguably today it's the most secure wallet in crypto. We use a backup mechanism called social recovery, It's all done on chain and verifiable.
Can you describe that? Like, what does that mean, social recovery?
Yeah. So basically, there's no seed phrases. So like people that use the Loopring smart wallet don't need to write down a seed phrase. Your private keys are secured by a group of guardians that you choose. One of those guardians can be the Loopring Guardian. Like we initially set up your phone and use like extra protection mechanisms like 2FA protection, or email like signing or face recognition, like built-in stuff like that to verify you. But it's highly recommended that you add additional guardians. And those guardians are basically your backup. So if something ever happens to your phone, you can basically just signal to your guardians that you need to recover your phone. They can sign a message. And as long as a majority of your guardians sign that message verifying that it's actually you that wants this, then you can recover all of your assets onto a new device. So just like different protection mechanisms like that, so you can sleep well at night. You don't have to worry about like, all of your assets are just like on this piece of paper and could be lost or stolen at any time.
As long as you don't piss off your friends or family.
Yeah, and those exactly. And but those guardians can even be you. They can be extra devices. Like for example, like a very common, like Vitalik, he actually helped us like with a lot of our early development of the Loopring smart wallet and just kind of like went over like our recovery process and stuff like that. And like wrote a blog about us and mentioned Loopring like when we first threw that out there. And like one thing he recommends is like you can actually use some of the guardians as yourself. Like if you have like, for example, a ledger device, you can use that ledger as one of your guardians. So like if something happens to your phone, and maybe you have like 2 other ledgers and your mom or something like that, and as long as you get a majority of those to sign a message saying that it's you, then no problem, you get your assets back. But it's pretty cool. And then we also have like a lot of other backup mechanisms. Also, we also have cloud backup and recovery. And it's not just like your private keys are stored in the cloud. No, it's like we encrypt and shard your private key, and basically it's like stored across a whole bunch of different locations, and it would be almost impossible for like one hacker to put it all together. And that's like a free way of doing it. The social recovery costs you like maybe a couple dollars to recover your wallet, but with cloud recovery, any user can have like a free way of recovering their wallet and not having to worry about seed phrases. And I think we have a pretty secure backup, cloud backup solution now.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I have confronted, like I've dealt with all these issues, and I'm not going to say that my mom is involved in any way because that might be exposing some more than I need to. But like that's kind of the stuff you do to protect your private keys, your seed phrases, or it's
too much for the average person.
I've got a good friend, and he did the thing where he put like he engraved it in metal and buried it in the ground. I get that's probably pretty secure, but that is not scalable.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably still people around the world burying gold in their backyard, so I think that's like the equivalent. So
that's true. All right, I want to take a detour, tangent, and get scandalous for a minute, because with Loopring is a layer 2 protocol built on Ethereum. There's a bit of an Ethereum scandal right now. Have you?
Did I miss this?
Oh, okay. Well, if you missed it, then this won't be an interesting conversation at all. But apparently, someone from the Ethereum Foundation accused the founders of Ethereum of massive fraud. Did you hear about this?
I did hear about this, but I didn't dig too much into it.
No, I don't think there's much to dig into. I think it's baseless rumor at this point, but like that's what sells tickets and gets the clicks. So we got to talk about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any extra information because unfortunately I didn't dig too much into it. I just kind of like wrote it off as like, this is probably pretty baseless. And even if something did happen in the beginning, like Ethereum is pretty decentralized at this point. Like no one person has any control over anything. But I mean, I hope people weren't defrauded, but it's kind of, Ethereum's kind of grown into its own beast at this point.
Yeah. So then let's talk about fraud, because that's fun. I think what we saw with FTX was another, and I think almost everything in crypto outside of some of like the social engineering hacks have been actually indictments of centralization, right? Most of the fraud in crypto has actually not been security holes. It's been, run-of-the-mill hacking of centralized systems. And I was reading something, and I think it may be, again, this might have been older material on Loopring, but I assume it's still true, because even using systems like that are some decentralized exchanges that are supposedly decentralized, you still have to push your crypto into it in order to interact with it. But that's not true with Loopring, is that right?
I mean, you do have to deposit into a smart contract, but there's all sorts of exit hatches that we don't control. So
Okay.
I think this is the most important thing, is
Okay.
and this is why we build directly on top of Ethereum. Like, unfortunately, there's a lot of other projects that say like they're layer 2s on Ethereum, but they're not actually layer 2s on Ethereum. They're actually side chains to have their own consensus mechanisms. And if you push your funds into those like bridges or whatever, your money is at risk of that consensus mechanism. Like what on Loopring, like your money is as secure as it is on top of Ethereum. The worst case scenario is like if Loopring became malicious one day and did something, like maybe you lose your most recent transaction that happened, like it would go back to its previous state, but then you could exit all of your funds back to Ethereum at any point, and Loopring has like no permission needed, so you can do that at any point. You get your funds back. So
you don't even have to trust Loopring.
Exactly, you don't have to trust.
Truly trustless.
Exactly. I think this is very, very key. Like this is how we can kind of like beat that scaling trilemma, where you have to trade off a little bit of decentralization in order to scale. We can kind of rework that by building these layers on top of Ethereum and tying ourselves to Ethereum and using these ZK proofs to post to Ethereum. So it's pretty cool. I'm very excited.
So in your be your own bank vision of the future, everyone has these, some version of these smart wallets, and they have complete control of their assets. They have complete recoverability. They don't have to trust anyone. Everything is dirt cheap to interact and transact. And that is a world in which you've really disintermediated, all of these constructs that we have put in place in this current world, like brokers and exchanges and banks and all of that, and you think that this is the tech that can bring that about ultimately, and so the real question is, when's that going to happen?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. And like, even just to take that a step further, like the be your own bank future that I kind of envision is like every single person is getting paid in crypto on the blockchain. Everything's on chain. You get paid in crypto. You do all your spending in crypto. You do all your investing in crypto. Like it's perfectly reasonable like future where like you'll go buy a pair of Nike shoes one day, and that'll come with a unique QR code, and you'll scan that QR code, and those will be verified like shoes in the metaverse one day. So like people will be in the metaverse and they'll see like, hey, that guy has like verified Nike shoes, and like everything, like I said, like your real estate deed could be on chain. Everything could be on chain. So like there's no need for on ramps, off ramps, anything. It's just,
what about
everything
this
is
autographed Billy Bean baseball? Is this going to be on chain? Come on, who has that?
I mean, yeah, there's going to be some scenarios where that could be very valuable. But like maybe the future celebrities are signing messages onto NFTs, and those become very valuable one day too. Who knows? But yeah, no, I like not everything is going to become tokenized and on chain, but I think a vast majority of things can be more fair, more free, and more efficient on chain.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you look at the level of intermediation and inefficiency and collusion and price fixing and it across so many different markets, I mean that's why I early on bought into crypto, and I buy into the future vision. I still struggle to see how we get there, but it's not that I don't hope we do. It just feels like this world is set up with impediment upon impediment to try and prevent that future, because the governments and the investment banks particularly are so staked into preserving the current system.
I completely agree. Except the whole system kind of lives and dies with the fiat dollar system. Yeah. So yeah, let's see what happens with the fiat system. Like for me, it's on an unsustainable path. I mean, like I said, in Argentina here, there's a perfect example of the end game of that. And the end game here is that like close to 50% of the population here now is into crypto and uses crypto to save money because against this like hyperinflation that's happening. And like rapidly everything is becoming on chain. And I think that's a very realistic, like maybe in the first world, like North America, right now, like maybe it takes a little bit longer. Like you've got the dollar system that works pretty good, but I think maybe it's the last one to go. But I think everything eventually goes that way. I think it starts with some of these like smaller, more dependent places that really need it, and then it kind of spirals and goes everywhere as humans realize like, hey, like we can really take back our freedom and control like on chain. Like I mean, I don't mean to blow up your spot, but I think you've talked publicly that you moved to Canada recently, and like you've seen what happened there. Like I don't think people can have personal freedom without like financial freedom or freedom to transact. Like you show up to a protest, and all of a sudden the bank is shutting down your bank account for no good reason, just because the government's not happy about it. Like I think eventually more and more of these scenarios play out, and people just slowly get pushed more and more to the self-custodial, decentralized world. Like as bad as the FTX situation was, he defrauded a lot of people, and it's horrible. Like I know people that lost a lot of money from that, and it's horrible. But the silver lining is that like a lot more people are now realizing that, hey, like we shouldn't be using these centralized systems. We shouldn't be trusting people with our money. Why? Like we don't need to. We can take control of our own. We can be our own bank. We can live this self-custodial life where these risks aren't possible.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that the Canadian action was a dangerous one. And you know, I don't have to agree with what they were saying to know that it's okay when free speech makes you uncomfortable, because it's important to preserve free speech. And I think you're right that like the freedom to transact is one of those freedoms that it goes along with the freedom to speak. So you know, I think it's a fair point. And I think that, you know, I'd like to think you're right. And I think most people would probably agree with you philosophically and agree that that's, like I said, that's a good end state to get to. I think most people still struggle to understand how they can adopt it. And so I hope with what you guys are doing to make that kind of user experience accessible to the average person, you know, that to me, you know, like we talked about earlier, that is the number one factor that will take crypto from, you know, a large but still niche thing to global broad adoption.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we've got still a few tricks up our sleeve, and it's going to be a little bit of a path to go here. Like I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think we're still years, maybe like a decade away from like we really seen this really play out with crypto and blockchain. But as we've seen, there's like these big events that happen, like the pandemic, like this FTX situation, that like are just like big pivotal moments that like change the paradigm. And I think more of those situations are going to keep happening in the world as there's a lot of chaos. And I think more and more people are going to be pushed in this direction. And eventually it's just going to snowball. We're going to hit an inflection point, and then it's just going to go. Yeah, I'm very excited about the future.
Yeah. Okay. And we're very excited because I don't know if people have seen this, but we have minted our first NFT on Loopring. Well, not our first, but Irvin's first. We, the investors, did one on Loopring, but this is Irvin's first NFT. And we are going to be distributing that to all the early adopters that jumped on the Irvin beta. And it was funny because on Twitter, we started talking about this idea of an NFT that can unlock things, right? It's not just a picture. It's not just a JPEG, right? It's this verifiable credential that says that you know, that carries something with it. And one of our ideas on Irvin is that it unlocks communities on the platform. And it just so happened that that's very aligned with sort of how you guys want to see NFTs used as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Communities are everything. I love what you guys are doing with Irvin, and yeah, like however we can continue to support you guys, we're here for you. But yeah, I think communities are everything. Communities uh, drive the whole economy. And yeah, if we can capture that using NFTs and different, like better, more fair, like incentive mechanisms, I think there's a lot we can unlock. I, especially as like the whole world moves digital, moves online, moves into these virtual spaces, all of that, like the crypto tokens, NFTs, they're going to be the currency of the new world.
If you're going to replace a terribly flawed system that at its core is built on conflicts of interest and warped incentives, to put everything in place with that kind of alignment with your users and what you're doing, I don't think if we're going to get to a future where decentralization works, I think it works because of that, because we figured out how to get rid of these conflicts and we figured out how to align everybody's interests. And maybe exactly. I hope that's not a pipe dream.
No, I think you're spot on. I think that's the direction that we're going. We need these fair incentive models that can't be manipulated by centralized parties.
Yeah. All right. So did we miss anything? I think we covered a lot of ground. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
No. I think we nailed it. That was awesome.
Yeah. No, this was fun conversation. Sorry we lost Pink there at the beginning. We had some technical difficulties, but we persevered, and we'll have her back next week. And next week we'll also be back with our monthly macro and markets episode and segment with Claudia Sam and Ophir Gottlieb, and we're really excited to welcome a new special guest. Kyla Scanlon is going to join us on that. So we'll be talking macroeconomics, inflation, hopefully not hyperinflation, but who knows, we'll probably get to some of that at some point. So make sure whatever platform you're listening to us on, give us a good rating. It really helps to spread the podcast and help to get it to other people, and subscribe if you can. Byron, thanks so much for joining us. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to working with you guys more. I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah, likewise. All right, sure thing. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.